I'd like to call the March 31st meeting of the Board of Finance to order. Moira? We're starting at 5:48, 5:47. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a lot to go over tonight, so let's go through the minutes first and see if we can get through these 5 sessions of minutes. Do I have a motion for the November
moved.
2nd?
Second.
These are November 5th minutes. Any questions?
Peter, I had a request when we reviewed these previously
Yep.
that we add in a statement, and I asked the clerk to go back and listen to the minutes so that we could get the statement correct. But one of the representations I recall from that meeting was Tom Cook representing that the decision on the demolition of the building would be completed within 1 year. And I wanted to make sure we got that in the minutes, that that was part of the discussion.
We can note it for this meeting. You can't go back.
Yeah, they don't actually rewrite the minutes at all.
Once they have to be submitted to the town clerk and a set number of days. Once they're submitted, you can't.
Even for a draft?
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Joe, what, if something happened and it's not in here, we can't make it say what happened?
Put it into the meeting minutes from this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put it into this meeting's minutes.
Okay.
And what we're going to put in is, on
That-
the meeting of
November 5th.
November 5th, that,
This is my understanding,
Yeah.
and I ask that we confirm it, but he's here, so you can. Tom Cook represented that the decision on the demolition of the building would be completed within 1 year.
is that a fair representation?
I recall something to that effect. I believe that's our intention.
Okay.
Duly noted, so we'll put it in this minutes, referring to that meeting. Anything else?
No, not for me.
Good.
Leslie, are these is this set 4 pages long? Well, this doesn't appear to be complete to me. I mean, there's no adjournment noted here at all. Is there a page missing from what we've got? Mine ends on page,
Yes, there is.
mine ends on page 4,
Which date are you on, Nick?
the November
Yeah.
5th.
The last one on here says spend the save policy for new CNR fund.
Yeah, I don't have an adjournment here.
I don't have
Those new minutes?
Actually, there are a few with no adjournment, if that's essential.
Well, if we had a special meeting, we wouldn't have adjournment. This was a special meeting, that's why there's no adjournment,
Oh,
okay?
okay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes passed. All right, motion for the February 24th minutes. Second?
Second.
Any suggested comments to add in this meeting for them?
Well, on page 2, where we were discussing the October 21st minutes, it appears to me that we amended those minutes at the November 18th meeting, but then we moved to table adopting these, and I'm not sure what, we were going to add something, I think, or clarify something.
So the October 21st, I think we were waiting because Barb wasn't here to review them because she had some questions on the October 21st, I think.
Sorry, I wasn't there. I don't remember.
Yeah, but we tabled the October 21st, so that's your point that we haven't passed those?
Well, I'm not sure we ever adopted that, maybe we did it as part of the November 18. This is last meeting, or next.
Now, February,
No. I'm not sure what we were doing there. It's not clear to me that what we were doing there.
well, we'll have to go back, I mean, and see if there was some further action on October 21st. Minutes,
Peter, could I-
Yes.
If those minutes were in fact filed with the clerk.
Yep.
Then you already have an official set of minutes that are filed. It's only if you need to change them that you need to take action.
Okay. But we just have something in here that said we tabled them, so
All right,
I
so
guess we approved them.
at this point, if they were filed.
Yeah, if they were filed, then we approved them. Okay. Anything else in the? All those in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Any opposed? No. Any abstentions?
Yes.
One? Okay, minutes passed. Motion for the March 11th?
So moved.
Second. Any comments?
My comment on these generally is, there isn't a lot of meat to them, and I would just request that we put a little bit more in the meat of the discussion. It just says topics were discussed.
Yeah, we
And-
talked about that last time, and they've changed the format of doing it, and. it's
Well,
the
so
way
I
it is.
think if we
agree.
ask for something very specific, it ought to be reflected in the minutes.
Oh, yeah, for
and,
sure.
Yeah,
And I
then I
have-
said that, yeah, if you guys specifically want something in,
Reflected, we need to
absolutely,
say
just
that.
tell me.
Okay, so I think on that meeting, I specifically asked that the utility cost be reduced to include the savings realized as a result of removing the modular classrooms.
Where are you, Barbara?
I suppose you would put it on the
page?
bottom of page 2. I mean, you have it, all the detail that got in there was Mr. Blumenthal and Mr. Mason questioned some of the numbers on the Board of Ed budget, which I think that conversation was like an hour long.
But I think minutes are only supposed to reflect action taken. Right.
Or requests, I think it's,
Yeah,
so.
Were you suggesting, Bob?
I would like to have the following sentence added. Ms. Pettigene asked that the utility costs be reduced to include the savings realized as a result of removing the modular classrooms.
Right. And what that's gonna happen is gonna be reflected in these minutes, not in those minutes revised, but the reference to that date is in the minutes tonight.
Right.
Okay.
And I know Mr. Blumenthal asked for a lot of specific things, but none of that's reflected here. I can't represent it for him.
Anything else?
That's all I had.
I'll second that. Do you need, is that a? Oh,
Well, they're gonna make note in these
all right, I
minutes
wasn't
for
sure if you
that.
needed that amendment
Yeah.
seconded.
I don't know if it's technically amendment, it's just a
Yeah, it is.
way of observation. Perhaps, one of these days, we could have somebody come give us a lecture on how do we get things in the minutes, so, tonight's probably not the night, but at a slower time, it would be nice, so we could understand the new way. Some of us are a little older, so you have to bear with us. All those in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes passed. Motion for the March 17th.
So moved.
Second.
Any observations?
I would suggest that where we have a split vote, Leslie, it would make sense to note who voted nay.
Which motion?
Well, it's on the second page, in the middle of the page there.
Oh, the 5-1?
Yeah.
Right. it's a-
Ms.
And
Ms.
that was-
Pettigene voted no.
I did.
So it'll be noted in these minutes that that's how the outcome of the vote. Anything else?
So if there's typos, we don't care
It
anymore.
doesn't really matter, because it's just gonna show up in some subsequent, whoever's reading the minutes online is still gonna see all those typos. I don't like this, just for the
Yeah,
record.
and the state now has a new rule that you can't make your minutes clean. They have to contain typos, and however they're transcribed by the clerk with no input.
We can certainly follow up with clerks on that kind of thing, and strive for minutes without typos. And we have had conversations with our clerks about that. But that's, as a general rule, and it's apparently not all that new a rule, we've all been, I think, following pretty much the same procedure. The minutes that are filed within 7 days become the official minutes. And if you want to amend them, as you guys have just been doing, that's an appropriate process, but it's not going to lead to a whole new set of minutes.
So a process that would look at a draft within the first 7 days and make corrections is appropriate?
That is, and under that scenario, the minutes you filed would be the final version.
A new job for you.
Then we should at least get a chance to look at them within that 7-day period.
Well, either that or what we approved tonight. If somebody wanted to go through and wordsmith it, we could have a whole sheet of changes and get it in the new minutes, reference to that date, so somebody would have to
Yeah.
reference it.
You're not gonna wanna waste time putting typos in 3 months later.
Well, I'm not concerned about typos as much as content, where there's major discussions that were an hour long and they're reflected as saying, you know, 2 people discussed X. It doesn't really give you any meat in the minutes at all.
Well, that's why I think we need to get an education as to how we get what goes in minutes and what doesn't go in minutes. I don't think we're gonna resolve that tonight, but I think we
We
need
can
to have a
certainly arrange
session.
something like that, and we
We
should
should-
get some folks in
Yeah.
to talk about it.
Right. I think that would be good for us. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Minutes pass. All right, we're through the minutes. We now are going to have the Board of Selectmen budget presentation first. And first Selectman, Lisa Hebner, will start off. So Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. With me tonight from the Board of Selectmen, we've got Deputy First Selectman Nancy Hasse, Cheryl Cook, Chris Kelly, Sean Askham, and then let's see Mike. Oh, sorry, and Mike couldn't come due to a personal commitment there. I'm pleased tonight to present the Board of Selectmen's proposed 2015-2016 budget for your review. This budget totals $867,969, which is a modest increase of 0.84% over last year's, and responsibly meets the needs of our community in the most cost-effective manner. I want to thank everyone who helped prepare this budget, members of the Board of Selectmen, the Director of Finance, Joe Mancini, Sean Kimball, Tom Cook, department heads, and staff. This was truly a team effort, and I thank all of them. We set 3 primary goals in crafting this budget. The first was to maintain fiscal responsibility by delivering quality services in the most cost-effective manner. The second was to ensure responsible stewardship of our natural resources and town assets to keep Simsbury a vibrant, beautiful, safe, and desirable place to raise a family and to do business. And the third was to modernize technology to provide transparency, increase efficiencies, and meet the current and future needs of our residents. I know that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance share my pride in the major accomplishments of the town this year. You'll see there's quite a number of them. Give you a minute to take a look. I wanted to highlight the Nerd Wallet Award. Nerd Wallet is a person. It's a great name. It is. So if we could highlight that, Sean. Nerd Wallet is a personal financial website which put together a list of towns in Connecticut that offer young families the best combination of solid schools, great neighbors, and affordability. As you can see, Simsbury was ranked number 1. They highlighted that in Simsbury, a medium household can expect to pay 22% of monthly income on home ownership costs, and that's actually a very impressive number. They also highlighted a great schools rating of 9 out of 10, and finally they highlighted the 84-mile Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, which runs through Simsbury, which goes to what we've known all along. People come to this town for the schools and the beautiful quality of life that we all enjoy. The primary drivers of this year's budget are contractual increases, including salaries, funding for 2 additional police officers to meet the needs from significant economic development projects currently underway, and in anticipation of those that have received preliminary approvals. Funding for 1 public works project administrator to assist with energy efficiency, green technologies, complex projects, and GIS work order systems. An increase of $90,000 to address a year-over-year gap in the Simsbury Farm Special Revenue Fund, as recommended by the Tri-Board Commission charged with evaluating financials at the farms. And 2 more. The filling of an assistant assessor position, and finally, materials, just with a normal cost increase on materials. As you can see from this slide, the town of Simsbury is fundamentally and at its core a service organization committed to meeting the needs of our citizens. As such, the majority of our budget is people-driven. I wanted to take a minute to publicly thank our staff, Simsbury Town employees, some of whom are here with us tonight, are highly professional and dedicated, and all the more so impressive for how they are able to do so much with limited resources. This slide is important and brings home the point that if we did nothing but meet our contractual obligations and everything else remained the same, our total budget would have increased by 1.88%. And as you know tonight, we're bringing you a 0.84% budget increase budget. As a people-driven budget, it's not surprising that pensions and salary play an important part of our budget. And given some of the press we hear out there with excessive salaries and benefits in other budgets, I wanted to highlight what the town pays in benefits and salaries. And you'll see that it's far from excessive. If you'll note, the median town employee salary is about $60,000 versus the median Simsbury household income. In Simsbury, the median household income is $117,577. When we talk about pensions, I want to just highlight that these are not excessive pensions. For a general government employee, we're talking just shy of $14,000, and for police, about $33,000 in terms of median. In crafting this budget, the Board of Selectmen goal was to avoid an increase in taxes. Careful consideration was given to what residents can afford to spend, and the budget was set within the context of both local, state, and national economic considerations. Those include, in addition to the goal of no increased taxes, knowing that the Social Security cost of living adjustment is 1.7% this year. We had a modest grand list growth of 0.77%. Stagnant state aid, we hope it remains stagnant and doesn't decrease. We'll find out in June, unfortunately. Mill rate considerations, the Hartford uncertainty, and an unemployment rate in Simsbury of 4.1% versus a 5.7% statewide. In this slide, you see the budget history with the fiscal year 2010 as a response to the initial impact of the Great Recession. You'll notice that this year's proposed increase is below the last three, and that's kind of a dramatic slide that Sean put together, and it really does show what happened during the recession. You'll notice that post-recession, during the recovery, the budgets have been very, very modest. Here you can see how we compare to other towns. Dramatic drum roll. We thought about fireworks, but
But they cost too much.
They're too expensive.
Look out the window.
Lisa, that's what's been announced so far?
that's what's been announced. As we were able to confirm those numbers today, so they are to the best of our knowledge as of today.
Yes!
Lisa, would you have copies of your presentation that we could take with us?
Oh,
It's very good.
yes, we can absolutely do that. And we will, just for the public, we do post these on our town website under our budget update tab on the front page. So anyone can get copies of these, absolutely. Right here, I think you've seen this before, but this slide shows the town's budget is a relatively small component of the overall budget, with most of the mill rate going to public education. Here you see that the median taxable assessment, based on an average home value of $277,000. Using the current mill rate, the median tax bill in Simsbury is about $7,436. So where do your tax dollars go? On this slide, you see the yearly breakdown of taxes on the median tax bill. Here you see that broken down per month, and you'll note that what goes to the town is less than many utility bills for homeowners, $123 per month. And this part, the next series of slides is probably the most exciting for me. It's what do you get for $123 per month? And I think, I hope you will join me in being proud of all that the town is able to offer. You get, this is what we offered last year. We had police protection, road paving and maintenance, snow removal and treatments, library services, town hall services, engineering and capital project services, emergency response, parks, pools, and recreational services. Just pause for a minute and take a look at those numbers. Social services in the senior center. And as you can see from that, it's a fairly extensive amount of services that we are able to offer the citizens of Simsbury. We're very proud of that. All of our department heads take great pride in what they're able to offer. In this slide, we wanted to again show you the impact of the Great Recession on town budgets and the town's response to changed economic conditions that resulted from the recession. In the last 6 years, during the recession recovery, you'll see a modest 2.07% budget increase. That compares with the prior 6 years to the recession, where you saw a 33.29% increase over those years. I think this is probably the most dramatic slide in our budget presentation. It really shows the cooperative effort of not only our town employees, town staff, the citizens, the three boards, Board of Ed and Board of Finance, and really responding to the changed economic conditions. We're very proud of this slide. In getting to this proposed budget of a 0.84% increase, the town was able to capitalize on savings. Those savings include grants received and managed, pension investment returns that this year were 14.7%, lower gasoline prices, employee contributions to pension and OPEB, negotiated telephone contract, and finally the OPEB, I almost forgot the big one, finally the OPEB actuarial obligation decline. Total, you can see that number, it's a very large number. I would like to thank town staff publicly for their willingness to help offset costs by agreeing through the collective bargaining process to increase pension and OPEB fund contributions. It's partly because staff was willing to step up when the economy faltered that we have been able to do what we do, and we are very, very appreciative. On this next slide, you see the budget process we followed up to now, seeing we are at the point where we are presenting our budget to you. As part of the budget process, department heads requested a 4.36% increase over last year's budget. And as you know, we're coming in at 0.84. None of the requests were unreasonable, and the current proposal was arrived at only after making very difficult reductions. Although the current recommended budget does not contain all that our department heads requested, it does capture and address essential needs. The first Selectmen's recommended budget to the Board of Selectmen reduced the budget to 1.7%. The Board of Selectmen, through our budget workshops, added back line items totaling $122,309. After the first Selectmen's budget, after I presented my budget to the Board of Selectmen, additional numbers came in with savings to the budget. We captured savings of $283,796, mostly from OPEB and pension, our savings. And these were due in large part, thank you to your board, the cooperative efforts of the Board of Finance, the Board of Education, and the Board of Selectmen. And I want to thank you for your participation in help fostering all of our goal to keep the budget flat this year. In summary, this budget maintains quality core services, fully funds contractual salary and pension requirements, funds 2 additional police officers, funds a new public works project administrator, restores funding to the assistant assessor position, and includes the contribution to Simsbury Farms of $90,000 to correct. And I just want to point out that one. That is just to correct an actuarial decision we made a number of years ago. It is not due to any fault on Jerry's part. This, our director of Parks and Rec who is here, this was just a correction. We tried something over the years that did not work. We're now making the responsible correction. Your budget book also contains a recommended capital budget for your review, which addresses essential needs and enhancements to key assets of the town. And some of those includes the Simsbury Farms Park, Rink, and Pool improvements, the Ethel Walker Woods improvements, public works facility improvements, critical infrastructure repairs, public safety improvements and resources, and the senior center community center construction. We'll get to that as we get into the capital budget, because that will actually not be coming to referendum in May, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. This year, we are only recommending 2 capital projects for referendum in May: the Simsbury Farms rink and pool improvements, and the Board of Education project and climate control systems, which Burke will address when he gets here a little bit later. As we're discussing capital, we did want to give you a history of debt service, and you can sort of see how we've done over time. In the time since the Great, and I do want to make the point that in the time since the Great Recession and low interest rates, some municipalities and towns across the nation have shown an increasing reliance on increased borrowing as a way to suppress budget growth. What this slide shows that in Simsbury, we have continued to issue responsible budgets, all while reducing debt service below that of 2009. So we have not, when you enter a recession and budgets are tight, it is very tempting to use debt service as a means to fund capital operating budgets, and we have not done that. You'll see we've kept it very steady, so we're proud of that. And lastly, you see budget dates. These are some of the key dates coming up. I'd like to highlight for the public hearing on operating and capital will be April 8th at 6 p.m. at Simsbury High School. And finally, all budget documents are available online at simsbury-ct.gov under the budget tab on the left of our website page. And with that, I am happy to answer your questions.
All right, well, first we'll stay with the operating budget. We'll have
Sure.
questions on that. What we'd probably like to do is go one at a time, whoever has questions.
I'm going to move over there because I'm going to refer to my book.
Okay, and just let the person ask questions, and then when they're done, we'll go to the next person. Who would like to start? Barb.
I'll be happy to start. I really just have one focus. There's 4 new positions, and I was kind of asking a lot of questions around the addition of 2 police, especially with the amount of money that was in there. And I'd like to understand better, have we included full year 12-month salaries for 4 full new positions? Or what do we really have in here, and what is going to be the burden that we're putting on taxpayers a year from now that we are not recognizing at this point?
That's a great question. I'll start with the police officers. What we're doing is fully funding 2 police officers, but we're doing them staggered starts this year. So the hit on the budget is the equivalent of 1 new officer. So the following year, there will be a 2nd officer. We are anticipating retirements. So you'll notice that, I don't know if you have the budget book in front of you, but when we added this, you'll notice there was a reduction of $30,000 because we had the retirement of a senior police officer that helped cover the cost of the 2 new officers. When you hire new officers, they often come in at a salary much lower than those who are retiring.
So what's the budget hit next year that we're not planning for yet?
Well, I can't tell you exactly because I don't know who's going to retire, but if nobody retires, it would be the equivalent of 1 new police officer, which is about $65,000.
56 salary and then 65 for.
So how about the other 2 positions? Are they in for 12 months, or do we have a burden on next year's budget for
With the
those?
assessor's position, what we did to accommodate that would start in July, I believe. And the way we were able to fund that is with the reduction of a part-time position. So it is fully funded at the salary that's listed in your book, but we were able to reduce the budget by eliminating the part-time position. So it does come in lower. And so the hit on next year is no different than what it is this year.
The part-time position is in the assessor's office.
Correct.
Correct.
Yep. And then with the public works position, again, that is a staggered start, so it'll be half hit this year and then the other half next year.
Linda, you got a follow-up question?
Yeah, just something related to the police officer position. Number one, I just appreciate that you shared with me a very lengthy PowerPoint that was presented, I guess, to the commission, or the commission, police commission. And that was very helpful. I just had 2 questions. One is, will the addition of police officer have any impact on overtime?
Yes, it will reduce it. We're anticipating that it will reduce it a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's reflected as well. And secondly, one of the things that was in that presentation was a comparison of our ratio of police to population.
Well, funny you should ask that. Sean, you wanna?
So my question related to that is, the comparison was, and it was pretty stark, showed that we were pretty far below the national average. But I would note that the national average is skewed by very
Cities.
large urban areas. So I'm actually more interested in knowing what the ratio is.
Absolutely.
If you
And
can provide that
we actually-
for Granby.
I could do it right now, because we
Okay,
anticipated some of these questions. We knew that the adding of 2 police officers were major drivers to this budget, and so I want to just give my thanks and appreciation to the police department who did thorough research on this, so that our board of selectmen could make a very informed decision. If you look up here, sworn officers per population, the national average, as Linda, as you pointed out, that does include some of the urban areas, is 1.9 officers per 1,000 inhabitants. In New England, it's about 1.8. In Connecticut, the municipal average is 1.9, and in Simsbury, the average is 1.5. Going on to the next slide. Currently, Simsbury has 36 sworn officers, and you see, to maintain that, you have to have between 36 and 37 to keep us at 1.5. So even at our current level, we are below what the municipal average is. If you look at this number, this is sort of interesting. What the police department did, working with our director of planning and the economic development committee, they took a look at economic growth potential and came in with a very conservative estimate. The growth potential is about 3,500 new residents. They came in with an estimate of 1,500, just the anticipated. And with that, if you look at it, if we do get the anticipated growth that our approvals and anticipated approvals out there through zoning, just to maintain the 1.5, we need to get to 38. But I also want to point out that even if we just stay current, we're still low compared to other municipals. If you look at comparison, sworn officer rate per 1,000 to the various, our comparison towns, and Linda, you made a great point about urban areas. There are some areas in the country that do need more police officers and some that need less by virtue of their location and what the community expects of their police officers. But you'll see even in our comparison towns, Avon, Farmington are two probably closest comparison, we are well below their ratio.
Yeah.
And if you look at the others, that
Do you
tells us.
have that for all of the towns? Because I'd just be curious about.
I do
things
not
like
have that at
Canton,
this
Granby.
point. We could get that. How many towns do you want?
But I just, the town, Farmington and Avon have a bit more commercial stuff than we do.
Actually,
Something
Simsbury has
like-
more commercial than Avon.
Well, but yeah, less retail. Just curious, like Canton, Granby, some of those really more rural towns. But it doesn't change my support for the position. I'm just
Yeah, we
curious.
can absolutely get that for you. I'll have Nick forward that to members of the Board of Finance tomorrow.
Appreciate it.
And just sort of following up on that, when you have large malls in towns, and I'm
Right.
thinking of Buckland over in Manchester, that puts a real load on the
Yep.
police department, and I don't know that we have anything really comparable.
Right, that's why I was saying Farmington and Avon are, they have the same amount of commercial, but they have a lot of retail shopping, and that's a high demand.
Oh, absolutely. I will say we do have about 1,000 apartments, new apartments that can potentially be built, so there is a potential for a dramatic increase in population. So one of the things I do want to point out that people may not know, that I didn't know until I really got to know the police department as well as I have, is that it takes about a year to train a new officer. And so there is a lag time between when you hire someone and when they're ready to go on the street. And so this is part of that anticipation of planning. I will say that we are anticipating in the next few years a number of retirements of our seniors, so that will reduce the budget over time because as you bring in new, the salaries come in lower. So we thought this was a good time in our department head review to make this recommendation to you.
I just want to say also that I think oftentimes the public thinks of police only in terms of crime, and that we're very fortunate that we have a pretty low crime town. But our police do a great job of public service in other ways. So recently, my social security number was stolen, I had to file a police report, boom, they were there like that, oh, thank you to Anthem. And my friend was telling me that she locked her keys in the car, police were there instantly, got her out. It's a lot of those kinds of things that the police are really good about community service, it's not only about crime.
And you make a great point, Linda, and one of the things we're proud of and that we've actually won national recognition for is we do take policing, we do it community policing, which is different than law enforcement. We look at it as public safety. This contrast was brought home so clearly on the national news as we saw what happened in St. Louis over the summer. So our police office does take great pride in this one national recognition and CALIA certification because we do take the approach to community policing. If you saw what happened after the shootings in Sandy Hook, how wonderful our police department was and how they were able to respond and their ability to reach out to the community. They are also in a position if they find someone in need throughout our community, they work closely with social services. So they really take community safety above all else. It's not just law enforcement for our police department, and we're very proud of that.
Anyone else have any other areas?
Oh, Lisa?
Yeah.
As you know, I'm a member of the Chamber and a supporter of things the Chamber does, and we also have Main Street that's trying to help promote business in town. Do you in any way try to capture all of the different areas, because they're spread out all through different parts of this budget that really go to those things that help promote bringing new business into town and supporting the the business climate here? Growing the grand list is really where I'm getting at. I mean, is there any way that you try and pull all that together?
Actually, that's the charge of the Economic Development Committee. By state statute, it's their job to coordinate those different departments and come up with a plan to coordinate and make sure that we are pursuing that. We do, as you know, give money to Main Street, which does a lot with business retention. Some of the best way to keep your economy strong is to focus on retaining those businesses that you have. We do work with Chamber. One of the things you see in our budget is for the first time we're adding $5,000 to the tourism department because they would like to do a welcoming center with Chamber, and so that would help support Chamber with their rent, but it would also help support the town and tourism because they would help monitor the visiting center and supply it and answer phones for it. And this is something we had in the past. It was recommended by the Economic Development Plan back in the 90s, and so you'll see that restored. They did come in with a request, Economic Development Committee, for a hub for $50,000, about $50,000 to this, but at the time we evaluated, and I believe I speak for my board, we didn't feel we had the extra funds to devote a full $50,000. So it's an initial seed money to see how that would work as they explore opportunities for creating a hub where they could bring together, and I think, Nick, this speaks to your point, to bring together Chamber, Main Street, some of the other nonprofits so that they can share resources, work together, and be a center and a resource for those businesses considering. So we are doing that. And Nancy and I had the opportunity to serve on the Economic Development Task Force, which is working on some initiatives. Chris now serves in my place on that. So there are some initiatives there. You'll see some. They're going to be refreshing some of the marketing materials in the website.
I also see a fairly sizable increase under public agency support in the social services department. Is that the V&A, or is it more than that?
Oh, that was the lateral. Are you referring to the 8,000 move?
You increased from 34 to 42,000 in that line item.
Let me get to the line item you're referring to.
It's under public agency support. I'm under tab 17.
What we did there is I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at my budget online, but you'll see that it's color-coded because Joe and I went a little crazy with the rainbow budget. It's very exciting. It is multicolored, but what you would see if you had a chance to look at it, some of the items are bright red, and those are lateral moves. So in public agency support, we used to have the teen center under the first selectman's budget, and we moved it back under community support, so we did do that. And that's the bulk of that. We did capture the V&A increase in contractual services as well.
That's what the Memorial Day parade budget.
Yeah, Memorial Day parade budget, we went up, and that was to reflect historical figures, what we were actually spending.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? The 4,000 that was put back in by the Board of Selectmen, what did that go to?
Fixing my quick delete button.
Oh, what did
Outside.
Very quick on the reductions, it's the additions that are.
Well, here's what had happened. I had asked Vicki LaCourse Beck, she does get a number of state grants.
Yep.
And I asked her, and the library at that time needed some money, and I said to them, well, have you met with the library and see if any of those grants are compatible with what the library is doing? Because one of the things we added last year was a teen librarian. So a lot of the grants that Mickey gets are compatible, and we asked Mickey to look and see if there are any grants, because she gives most of those grants to the Board of Ed. And so we asked her to see if there were any she could give to the library. And she said there was, and they worked together and they found those grants, but we accidentally deleted 4,000 from Mickey's budget. It was supposed to come out of the grant line item, not out of her operating budget, so that was added back.
I have a couple questions, concept questions. First of all, I think your budget's very responsible. I was very happy to see the budget. I was even happy with the original budget. I'm even more happy with the revised budget that we were all able to work on.
Okay, we're done.
I was extremely happy to see the number. And also that's a responsible budget that keeps services, and it's not a gimmick budget, it's a real budget.
It is.
So that's good. So our job is to make sure there's real budgets out there that are responsible, and I feel good about all inquiries and probing that I have done over the last couple of weeks. So I'm not going to bore you with them here, but a couple items. I was happy to see that in Simsbury Farms we got the full 90 in, so I assume that's in
Yep.
the budget, because that's what the committee agreed to, so that's, I think, got to get a reasonable solution there to help Simsbury Farms out in our recreation. So I think that's important.
And one thing, Peter, my board was very supportive. Once we discovered the extra savings we found, the initial recommendation was to phase it in over 2 years before we realized we had the savings we did. But that would, to Barbara's point, would have added a known expense to the next year's budget. So by putting it in this year's, we removed that known expense. So we were pleased to be able to do that.
Now, in addition, on Simsbury Farms, they were paying back capital non-recurring, and that's taken out of their budget, the 10,000. So that's part of that agreement that we all worked on, so that will help their budget too, that 10,000.
Absolutely.
So it was nice to see that in there.
Peter, excuse me. I know that some people have questions around what we've done to make Simsbury Farms self-sustaining, and this 90,000 was part of. Can we just explain for people listening what that's about?
Well, I'm going to ask Mr. Toner if he could explain that, his budget, to make sure that now, in light of what we've done, those moves, does he feel comfortable that we have a responsible budget that won't put us into a deficit at Simsbury Farms?
Well, I think the 90 is going to go a long way towards it. As you mentioned also, it's not really 90 because the capital non-recurring is gone. The golf course now is responsible for all equipment replacement that formerly was absorbed by the budget. So I think the 90 goes a long way. I think, as I said before, I think we're in very good position on the expense side of the budget. I think through the 9 months of this year, I think we're every indication is that we're where we need to be, and I think that will continue next year. The uncertainty still remains in revenues, and I think we're going to continue to closely monitor it. I think we've have a lot of initiatives in place. We're optimistic. Not optimistic about the weather so much. We're optimistic about the things that we have in place, and I think we've seen some very, very positive trends in our program of facility revenues, and I think our marketing efforts are where they need to be. Obviously expenses are easier to I think be comfortable with and give assurance than revenues are, and we're going to do the best we can.
I just want to congratulate Jerry. He is working with Main Street. We'll be working with Main Street, to your point, Nick. What are we doing to promote economic development and to highlight, this is a gem. It not only is important to your revenue stream, but it really promotes the town of Simsbury. And it is a large reason, as we talk to our realtors, as to why residents move here. So it's preserving an important asset.
Now, another area on open space, you would put money in for open space. I know we had talked about that before, and there was a whole schedule. So a piece of that schedule that we had seen is in this budget, as far as open space programs or doing.
Well, what we're doing with open space right now is our open space committee is going through and categorizing all our open space. We actually never had an accounting of what open space we have and what's on there in terms of habitat, fauna, relationship to other open space. So the open space committee is working on that. I want to thank Jerry. He is working with Trinity College to get an intern to help us do that at a very responsible price. And so that process is underway. Open space, you will see there is some money in the capital budget going towards the Ethel Walker Woods, some initial improvements there. We do have some money from this current year to address some of the stuff at Betty Hudson. So we're starting to, as we transition from acquisition to stewardship, we are beginning that planning process.
So it's in this budget, that's what I saw throughout the book, so.
Yeah,
We had talked about it extensively last fall, I guess, when we talked about that piece of land. And I know there was a pretty hefty number, but I see most of it, a good part of it's in here, still within the framework of this small increase.
Yeah, we are making a very serious attempt now to evaluate stewardship, and we haven't really done that in the past, and as we do that, we will have better understanding of what's to come in the future, but that is a very strong attention that our staff is paying right now.
I was happy to see that. CNR fund came out, I wasn't happy at first when I saw the CNR, but I was happy the second version. Sometimes I'm hard to be made happy, but the second.
happy.
I'll take what I can get. Thank you, Moira, for that.
But the CNR came out in our guidelines that we like to follow, which makes the fund more solvent. So just from an overview solvency standpoint, that's why I was concerned. But I think it's responsible now. We're able to fit it into the way the fund can be financed. So I commend you on that, to getting that down to the number that I liked, and it's better.
We like to see you happy, Peter.
Thank you. Now, here's where I got to make sure, I talked to Joe about this earlier. On the sewer operating, we've had a little bit of trouble, and this is procedural trouble on authority. We have in there a debt service payment that's net of other town shares. Now, technically, we have to approve a higher number. Are we going to get a revision
Yeah,
showing the higher number, showing net of the payment?
yes, I prepared the motion properly to include.
Okay, so that'll be in the
portion of
motion?
Avon and Granbury.
Because we see a number here of, is it
It's just
855
the
net, but really we pay more and we get some reimbursed from other towns.
Yep,
So we have that squared away because we had to keep the auditors happy and we didn't quite do that right last year.
correct.
I want to make sure we do it properly this year. So I know we had a little trouble getting our arithmetic correct. So it didn't change anything bottom line, but it's just more procedural. All right, now also going back to Simsbury Farms, my one little, technically the budget was off $370, so we solved that problem.
Yep.
So the budget will balance.
$370.
I just want to make sure
We're following what the Board of Selectmen approved.
that when we carried forward a budget for the taxpayers, that we move on, that it's a balanced budget and we get it with, the 370.
Correct.
I know it's a small number, but somebody might notice it. Also, there was a list of CNR projects that I guess you did not include, and you put them in our book just to show what you were considering but did not include.
Repeat that, the CNR?
Yeah, CNR.
So the
capital-
CNR, you guys still have to give me the authorization to go ahead with 499.
Yep.
But the language that you guys are forwarding on is the 416,250. Because that's ultimately what you're going to pay back on.
He's saying that he's seeing the list of those
Yes.
that
There's
were-
another page, the ones that you did not put in there at all.
Oh, sorry, correct.
So that's what that page is for, because I finally read it, it said not considered in the first selectmen's proposal. So I assume you wanted us to see other projects requested, but you chose not to put them in.
For this year, some of them we've deferred. In any budget where it's tight, we make difficult choices, as you know. Department heads came in at 436, and we are net at a .84, so there were difficult choices to be made.
Okay. Basically, my comments stand in the beginning. I think it's a responsible budget. I'm very happy with it. I have no problems moving this on. myself, and hopefully my board won't have any problems either, but I think it's a good budget. It meets the town's needs, and it's very fiscally responsible, and you can see the numbers that you showed up historically. We're in the right direction. It's all that hard work that we did paid off. So I appreciate your efforts and staff and
The board of selectmen was very supportive and worked very collaboratively with me, and I want to thank them for that.
And also with the new finance director, it's been a pleasure working with him to enhance, he has to talk to me too about some of these enhancements, so we thoroughly understand them, and it's been a pleasure working with Joe to get a real thorough understanding of what's in here, so that has made a big difference too.
Very
So.
appreciative. I just want to recognize Mike Kane, who came in after I identified the member of the board of selectmen who were here, so welcome, Mike.
Sorry, I was late.
We need a motion.
Sure.
I just had one question on parks that I forgot to ask earlier, and that has to do with the allocation of your salary and benefits and Taryn's between Parks and Recs versus Simsbury Farms, and I always felt that previously too much was allocated to Simsbury Farms, like 100%, because I know well that you work on many other things. And so has that changed? Have you reallocated that, or is that?
That's still, the same formula is still in place right now.
Okay, and is that something we're continuing to look at? I know there's a committee looking at.
That's where part of that 90 comes from, to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, because I do think that should get changed over time.
Linda, I think you make a great point, and one of the things our board discussed and recognized is that this is the first step. We'll be evaluating how it works over time, and there may be adjustments we make going on. I do want to say the Parks and Rec is an asset to the town, and just as we supplement our assets like the library, it is a worthy asset to supplement, and so we're very proud of that.
Having moved here because of softball fields in town and tennis courts.
Well, there you go.
I totally support that budget.
Thank you, Linda.
Now, as far as procedural tonight, we still have a presentation on the Capitol.
You do.
And what we'll do is wait to the end, and then we're going to get an update from the Board of Ed, their revised budget, because we saw a different budget presented. And then after that, we'll pass, we need to move on to public hearing. We can kind of do it all in one motion, so if that's all right with the board, if we're done with the operating budget, we'll move on to the Capitol. Any further questions? Barb? Linda? Maura? Nick? Okay. Why don't you move on to Capitol?
All right, I'll invite Jeff Shea, who is our town engineer, who will be giving the presentation tonight. We also have in the audience Tom Roy and Chief of Police and Nick Bolter, who are generally a lot of our capital projects this year. And no, I'm sorry, Jerry as well.
Now, is this handout part of this too, that we got?
This is his presentation.
This is his
This is what you're gonna see up there.
Gotcha.
Some of you guys have.
All right, good evening. Going to give you a brief presentation of the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2015-16. First, I just want to say I worked very closely with the infrastructure managers, Tom Roy and Jerry Toner, very closely, since most of the projects involve them. To a lesser degree, the planning department, Hiram Peck and Vicki LaForce Beck, or Vicki Beck LaForce. Thank you very much. Primarily on the senior center project. So our primary focus in preparing this capital program was really threefold: maintaining existing infrastructure, basically replacing through lifestyle, life cycle cost, various equipment, playground equipment, mechanical equipment, that type of thing. Compliance with existing regulations or mandates that we may not be in compliance with, energy savings, and to a lesser degree, some new facilities, but again, they're very minimal with the exception of probably the senior center project. So I'm going to go through the first year projects, putting the senior center aside to the last discussion point, and I'm happy to go through the future years if there's any questions on those. So I'll start with the Simsbury Farms improvements for the pool and rink project. Just to give you a little background on the rink was and the superstructure was constructed reconstructed in 1999. There's an existing warming area that's part of the project that was actually part of the original 1972 construction. The project would include evaluation of all the refrigeration equipment that exists at the rink that's reaching really the end of its useful life. It's 15 or 20 years old. The equipment degrades and needs replacement. And the second piece is the superstructure. It essentially needs maintenance. It needs to be recoated. The paint is peeling because of moisture conditions that typically exist in a facility like this. So it needs to be repainted and preserved. The pool complex was constructed in 1972. The existing gutter system that was installed at that time is somewhat inefficient and it results in significant loss of water, which is an operational cost that we think we can reduce through replacement. This would be done as part and parcel with structural improvements to the structure of the pool, both the walls and some of the mechanical equipment, the drains, things like ladders, lifeguard chairs, that type of thing. So these structural repairs based on the life of the facility are expected, and they're not complete, they're partial repairs. There you can see one of the condenser units that would potentially need to be replaced at the rink. And on the lower picture, there's a picture of the filter equipment for the pool. So moving on to the next slide, this is some of the scope of work, again, that would be completed as part of the project. There'd be reconstruction of the enclosed seating area, the warming area for the spectator use at the rink. We would evaluate through an engineering review the refrigeration equipment, the chillers, condenser, and compressors that serve the rink, determine what the best course of action is with consideration to energy efficiency, where we could save on operating costs, and as I mentioned, the painting of the superstructure. The pool facility, the main pool, we would again replace the gutter, ladders, deck equipment, walls would be repaired, drains would be replaced, surge tank would be replaced. In the diving pool, similar types of repairs, tile, coping, and wall coating to preserve the structure. The wading pool would also be addressed through repairs and replacement of the concrete skimmer. In the filter room, again, there's lots of the equipment in there needs replacement. The valves, the chemical feed, pumps, and appurtenances related to that. So this is a large project. There's a lot of different pieces to it. Beyond that, there's other miscellaneous repairs at Simsbury Farms that include tennis courts. Jerry, help me on that. Some of the miscellaneous fencing.
Yeah, on the Simsbury Farms appropriation, the other improvements, one of the major ones is a phone and data systems upgrade. We also have some playground fencing replacement and...
Is that, excuse me, is that different than this number, or is that in this?
That's included in this.
It's in this number?
Yes, it is, yeah.
I mean, just an overview, this number would have to go to referendum because it's over the 1%.
That's correct.
So this $1.1 million request would go to the voters.
Yes.
Question, overview question. You're going to be expected to replace equipment. You say you're going to, your evaluation and upgrades to refrigeration system. So you are planning on replacing them in this number?
We have actually consulted with a supplier, a maintenance supplier, but we would like to go to the next level. Again, get an engineering firm to look at it, evaluate the equipment, and make good choices in terms of repair or replacement. As I think I had mentioned, some of it's going to be refurbished. The compressors, for example, they stay. They have a very long life, but they do need refurbishment over a certain period of time. The actual chiller unit would be something that would need to be replaced based on typical replacement cycles for that type of equipment.
But it's in this number if we have to replace it?
Yes.
And will we get any operational savings from doing that?
We will get savings. Again, we don't know exactly what those savings will be.
Hard to...
We know that number's a fairly large number, Jerry.
We're into 15 years now, and obviously since the rink was rebuilt, in 1999. There have been a lot of technology.
Some of us
upgrades.
remember when the rink was rebuilt because we were on the board.
Exactly.
It seemed like yesterday, but it was 15 years ago.
But yeah, I think there will be, you know, we have every expectation there will be, you know, cost savings, you know, through energy and primarily energy savings through these. But what we're finding in the industry is most of it, as Jeff alluded to, most of the equipment is on a 15 to 20 year life cycle. So we're right in that window. I think we've done we've addressed the regular maintenance as it should be, so I think we're in good shape now. But it's not the sort of thing that we can overlook or extend beyond its life. So we're in that window now where you know, these items do need to be addressed.
Thank you.
And there's a couple of minor items that I think we mentioned, playground fencing replacement and the main building needs repainting. Jerry, those are two other items we're hoping to pick up as part of that project.
Okay. Let's go on.
Next project is the park improvements project. It's about $508,000 in fiscal year 2016. This number actually increased. You'll notice some of the numbers were adjusted. We did take a hard look at the numbers, and some of them were shifted into earlier years. In some cases, we actually split apart the design cost to get ahead of the project and refine the cost in the out years. So this project involves various improvements at various locations. At Simsbury Farm, the tennis courts would be reconstructed or rejuvenated. Parafel Park would include renovation of the pavilion, playscape, and the tennis courts. Memorial Park would include the wading pool replacement and building improvements. The existing building would be refurbished. Simsbury Farm and Memorial Park would be accommodated with lightning protection, monitoring for the users, for safety purposes. There'd be miscellaneous fencing, some irrigation repairs, lighting improvements, playground accessibility upgrades. In some cases, there's wood chips around some of the playgrounds. We'd like to upgrade that to a rubberized accessible surface. And at Simsbury Farm, if we could hopefully get good pricing on some of the other items, we'd like to construct a new basketball court, which was in the original master plan prepared back in the 90s.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
How much of the park's improvement, the 508, is for Simsbury Farms?
I can probably answer that. The biggest piece of it is the tennis court reconstruction, which also includes drainage work at $192,000. The other thing on the lightning protection system, that was something that we've looked at for a number of years and primarily was focused on Simsbury Farms, particularly for the golf course and pools. We don't have any automated system now, so we're really focused on that. Is the more that we have looked into it and with the more recent technology, it has the ability to reach out to other satellite locations. So we thought this was a good opportunity to also include Memorial Park in here. Since that probably has the most intense use, it's close to Simsbury Farms. I think at later times we will probably look at the ability to also, you know, reach out to other parks and other youth groups that are using these areas. But it really grew out of the need for it at Simsbury Farms, but again, we are reaching out and looking at maybe making it throughout the park system eventually. So the two biggest pieces in there, I think, are the tennis court reconstruction, lightning protection. Again, as Jeff alluded to, we have the basketball court in there. It's a holdover from the master plan that was done in 1998. We still have folks that were on that complex committee that would still like to see it happen. Be a nice thing to have, but certainly have more pressing needs that we have to address first. So that's why it is at the end of the list, but nonetheless, it's something we'd like to keep keep in our plans.
So, Peter, can I just follow up? Since this project does not go to the voters, and the first project does, I'm just wondering why we didn't put Simsbury Farms all together in a package so that the voters could vote on all the Simsbury Farms projects rather than just the pool and rink, and then the other one would not be within their ability to vote on.
If I can speak to that, I think when we tried to break the projects down, we tried to make them a manageable size in terms of similar types of work. not necessarily driven by location, but when we put a package together, say for a bid, we would try to do it comprehensively throughout the system for similar types of facilities to get a better cost, a better price on the actual construction. So it really wasn't driven by location.
No,
It was driven by the type of work.
No, I think Jeff's right, and the other, with the tennis court construction, you know, we're looking at both, you know, Simsbury Farms and Terriffill Park. Coincidentally, they were done together the last time in 1997, 98. There certainly are economies of scale in doing those two projects together, so I think that was how that really, how that one grew together, or those two grew together, actually.
All right, let's run to the next one, the open
Next project.
space. Yeah.
Next project is the Open Space Planning and Improvements Project. This is the project Lisa mentioned earlier. We're in the first year, we've carved out $145,000 for what we think is minimal improvements to allow Ethel Walkowitz to function for public access, to take care of things such as signage, hazardous tree removal, invasive species removal, minimal boardwalks and culverts and bridges, minimal parking improvements, accessibility improvements, the types of things that get people into the system, so to speak, and get them familiar and comfortable with the facility. In the out years, as Lisa had mentioned, we have some money in there for Old Bridge Road, the Hudson property, and a townwide open space master plan that might be the next step after the inventory is completed, that Jerry's working on right now with the Trinity School.
But this proposal is just for Ethel Walker?
First year is just for Ethel Walker.
Let's put $145,000, just for Ethel Walker.
That's right.
We do have some money left over from the purchase of Betty Hudson that we can use toward improvements there for this year.
Right, which is about $50,000.
But you put all this together for all years, and your number there is almost $1.2 million. And this is a concerted effort to, I think, correct an area that we've had some deficiencies in for some time, so.
And again, we don't know what would come out of that open space master plan in terms of recommendations. We're hoping we can learn from the Ethel Walker experience in terms of what the minimal needs or wants may be to provide better access to those properties.
All right.
Next project is the Weed Tog Planning Route 10 and co-preparation work. This is a project advanced by the planning department that would allow for planning similar to the downtown Charette Center Code experience, where there is a determined plan kind of defined, the zoning modification to allow for redevelopment of that area. This would dovetail in with potential roadway improvements that the state has been talking about, operational improvements down in that area. This would allow us to kind of work hand in glove with DOT on any improvements that might be proposed.
Can you, couldn't figure out from that little map where that's supposed to be.
That is the intersection of, I believe, Sand Hill Road and is that Canal Street on the left, those two streets that are intersecting. The street on the right is along the Farmington River. That was a bypass roadway that was conceived as, I believe, part of the Route 10 corridor plan. Don't know whether that would ever be built, but that would potentially create a development site kind of in the middle, in this kind of a center green concept to give Weed Tog a little bit of an identity.
But it's also trying to straighten out the traffic problem we have down there, isn't it?
It would help. It would help with the problem, although there's things that could be done again operationally.
So can you,
Route 10?
yeah, that's exactly my question.
Route 10 is the,
Route 10's coming in here, and then this was, I'm sorry, this is Route 10, but what?
That's Route 10?
There's Canal.
Yeah, this is Route 10 here, but 185 is coming, you don't see 185 coming off the mountain, and this is a spur road off of it.
That's right.
So say that
So
again?
is the Riverview back there?
The Riverview's right up there.
Yeah, okay, right here.
You're not gonna take those sycamores down, are you?
this is just a concept.
185 comes down off the
All right, so at least we got our bearings.
Where is this?
It's not there now.
With this kind of project, and this dollar amount, this is one of the things we might talk about funding the beautiful way.
So those three brown buildings are not exempt?
Right.
We're not doing that.
I was like, where, I don't remember those buildings. Okay.
These are conceptual plans, they would have to go through the planning process. We don't have agreement yet, they would begin the process of doing it.
This all came out of the charrette, right?
I think initially there was at some higher level, there was some discussion of nodes in the north and the south.
Right.
But my point before was that the focus of that was to try and straighten out some of the traffic problems of
Yes.
that intersection at 10 and 185, and in particular, you know, traffic during the commute time.
That's correct.
So that arrow on the right at the top, that one there, is that the bike path?
Yes, it is.
And that would turn into a road?
No, that's
No.
just sort of an intermodal kind of flow of traffic in various modes.
Obviously, we need to get a little bit more understanding. of
Next time, we're
this
not
project.
putting a picture.
Yeah, you're right, we don't do good with visuals.
We do it with visuals that are labeled.
That's why we need the money, so we can give you
We
better.
we understand numbers quite well.
Next time, just a picture of cars.
Right.
So is this something that the Planning and Zoning Commission are asking for, or one or
Yes,
the
this
other?
came from the planning, it was a request by the planning department. It is based on the Route 10 study that we did a few years ago. And that was their recommendation as they were looking for road improvements. One of the opportunities we saw through planning is there was an opportunity to create another mini town center in the Weetag area. Because what they were recommending worked well with our planning vision and the POCD. So this is not in any way a done deal. This will go
So
through
this
discussion.
57,000 then is really to do more planning?
And code work to allow the changes that the planning and zoning may recommend.
Perhaps some more follow-up on our part would help us get a better understanding. If we could just,
If you would like, we can
offline,
certainly.
we'll just kind of,
Okay.
just get a little more purview of where we're going with it.
Absolutely.
I think that would help us before the public hearing. Money-wise, I got a different thought for how we're gonna pay for it, but we'll deal with that later. Okay, next one is the highway shed, salt shed.
Yep, the next one is the highway salt shed replacement. This project was actually in an out year, but with the conditions and the situation we experienced this winter, we felt that we needed to accelerate this project. This would provide us with a new, larger salt shed. Tom, please elaborate.
Thank you, because now this, if we approve this, it'll sure will not snow next year.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. For this small investment, we will guarantee yourself no snow next
Right.
year.
I-
Long and short of it, that beautiful architectural structure shown in the upper right-hand corner was one of the earlier salt sheds in Connecticut because our public works facility is located in an aquifer. So fortunately, we were very forward-thinking a number of years ago when it was constructed. Housing a fairly corrosive chemical like our salt, it is showing signs of deterioration, and rather than even consider investing in modifications to the small structure, we are looking at building a much larger fabric structure shown in the lower right picture that would be able to house 1 year's worth of salt. The problem we have right now is we have about enough for 3 moderate snowstorms. And as we saw last winter, which really got a lot of publicity with the salt shortages across the state, we had a similar situation this year. Fortunately, we had diversified our suppliers, but all of our suppliers were still using the same shipping terminal. So after every major snowstorm, our highway superintendent at 5 o'clock in the morning was dialing the phone because that's when he knew that the terminal opened. And he was going to be the first call in to order our next shipment of salt. And it puts a lot of stress on our operation when we're not assured that we're going to have enough product if we have a series of 2 and 3 storms in a row. So in addition to the fact that the facility that we have now is outdated and showing some signs of age, it offers up the reliability that we need.
Good. Good, think we got it? All right.
Where's that located?
At the Public Works compound. Town Forest Road?
If you haven't done a tour of that area, I know, I had the opportunity to go down there recently. It is a very impressive complex, and I encourage, I'm sure we can arrange a tour for this board if you're interested, because it's pretty neat.
Next project is the municipal building renovation project. This was a project that was in the 2018 fiscal year. previously, but we felt it was important to carve out, again, some planning and design money so that we could investigate space needs, the changing space needs of the town hall. Town hall has not been renovated, I think, in 35 years, so it needs a fresh look. The potential for energy efficiency improvements that could come out of that project.
I think
I think we did the police
Yeah,
department.
we just did the
about-
police department.
Well, just did means about
Within the last 10 years.
10 years ago. It's always been fun.
Yeah, I think in terms of the police department, we just look at their space needs and see if there was a need for additional or maybe not additional space. That could be potentially.
So this goes back to adding 4 staff. We need to be careful that we understand the full cost of adding 4 staff, because it means we now need bricks and mortar to put staff in. There's a lot more expenses than necessarily just the salaries.
Well, one of the things we'll look at is how we can reconfigure to accommodate. As you know, this building, as lovely as it is, does not use space efficiently and does not use energy efficiently. So I'm sure we can accommodate those needs. We will be evaluating that.
Next one, Dan.
Next one is dam evaluations and repair. This was a project, again, that was in the out years with changing regulations. There's now a requirement that inspections be done on dams on a periodic basis. So we moved the cost of inspections to the current year, fiscal year 2016. Felt that was prudent to try to be in compliance, so we don't receive any notice of violations from the DEP.
Good solution.
Where's Lake Basil? I never heard of it.
Lake Basil's up in the north part of town.
You take the bike path all the way up. Oh, it's that one? Okay, yeah, seen it.
So this one, I wondered why it was on a capital list. It felt like an operational expense.
Definitely not. I would say this inspection process could result in a design process or a repair process. There might be things that need to be done.
But the resulting thing would be capital, but I would think that inspecting our dams is operational.
But we can talk about how we want to finance it. We got some options, I think, of pulling this somewhere else. Take it off, the pressure off capital.
And one of the things we've tried to do in the capital budget is, most capital projects do involve a planning stage, and we tried to incorporate the planning costs with the capital project, because those are the true costs of any capital project. In this evaluation, we are anticipating will lead to some capital recommendations in a future time.
Public Works.
As Lisa invited everybody out to take a tour of the facility, we have a number of small projects which really could have been, or were originally anticipated as being CNR type projects. But when we started looking at them in aggregate, they clearly marked an opportunity for a larger capital project. This past year, we were fortunate in that we received a donated 250 kW generator. The facility currently was running on a 40 kW generator that was undersized for the amount of work that's done during storms. The lights would dim actually when the compressor or the welder went on. We were very fortunate to get that piece of equipment, but there's cost associated with installing it. We need to upgrade this building and our combined custodial and Board of Ed building so that it's on the sanitary sewer system. That's also going to be necessary for the truck wash that we should be constructing this summer. It's important that we get onto the sanitary sewer system because we are an industrial facility. There's stormwater regulations associated with being an industrial facility, and simply using septic tanks and holding tanks is not an efficient way to run an industrial facility. We also are looking to do a roof replacement project. We had a number of roofs leaking over the last 2 years. With the roof replacement, we're also going to see energy improvements. If you look carefully on that photo, you'll see that the snow on the roof ends at a certain point. That's the point where the roof goes from being cold storage to heated space. So we are losing enough heat to melt the snow that we had this winter. So it's an opportunity for some long-term savings. We're also converting the facility over from propane to natural gas. So we're going to have to upgrade some of the heating equipment in the facility. So it's a number of smaller projects that all came together. We're also looking to sprinkle the facility. It currently has no fire protection. A facility in Connecticut 3 years ago, one of the trucks caught on fire and they lost an entire fleet of trucks. In addition to being an insurance risk, if we were to lose our fleet during the winter, they cannot simply be replaced. There's just not a fleet of trucks that we can go and purchase, so it's a number of important projects for us.
You also have people sleeping out there.
That is the other thing that is the, we'll call it I mean, it's a known reality. During the storms like we had this winter, the long duration storms, the guys sleep there. After 16 hours of being on shift, they are allowed to sleep for 4 hours. And it's
Generous of you.
I was not promising you I was a nice guy. I tell you what, it's a hard job, and they truly are dedicated and work hard. And I think we owe them to sleep in quarters that are appropriate and that are properly fire protected. We are not code compliant with them sleeping in an unsprinkled building right now, and I don't think it's the right way to go.
And that was a huge priority for the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, I totally agree.
All right, Town Hall Site and Safety, back to the Town Hall.
Yeah, sure. Town Hall site and safety improvements. Again, as Tom said, this project, after discussions, ended up being a combination of many different components. With recent experiences with pedestrian crossings on Route 10, near misses, the access to Town Hall is not the best. We think we can improve it maybe by looking at where these driveways are located relative to other driveways and other crosswalk locations. There's a need for additional storage on the site. There was an existing project to reconstruct the parking lot, so we felt we'd take a step back and kind of look at these other things and evaluate them. Sidewalk and curbing repairs need to be addressed. There's some landscaping issues around Town Hall. There's also storage and security.
Yeah, specifically in the back of the building where the sally port is, where the police come and go when they do have, I guess it's the prisoners. That area right now has a slope that's failing. We need to build an appropriate retaining wall back there. There's a number of large trees that need to come down. We don't want to actually remove the trees at this point in time because the root structure is part of what's holding that slope stable. Associated with that are emergency generators back there. The chief can tell you that we need to have that secured with fencing. So we'd like to fence in that whole area so that it would be a secure compound and wouldn't allow anybody just to wander back. It's not a place that should be accessible to the public. And then as Jeff was saying, we actually had one of our employees that was struck, and not seriously, while he was crossing to deliver the mail one night. So, I mean, it's a serious issue. And then the final piece is we have a storage facility on site. Way off in the corner, it's a garage where the maintenance equipment is kept, and it's in need of serious improvements.
So the first year is basically to allow us to plan and design for a second-year project. And we're asking for $45,000. Next project, the generator project. This project is sort of a continuation of the emergency generation that's being installed around town at the high school and the Terrifel. This would provide us with a portable generator that could be used for redundant service here at Town Hall for the Emergency Operations Center, and also be used to maintain heat and light at Eno and the library as needed to keep those buildings functioning during extended electrical outage. Thank you. This is actually a shared cost item. $80,000 would come from the general fund, and another 80 would come from WPCA budget. It'd be a shared facility. We don't all need it all the time, so we feel we could share it and function as we need to.
Actually, sharing is going to be ideal, because if this was only a town asset, it's essentially truly a piece of emergency equipment that we could go 2 or 3 years without needing, hopefully. But with it being shared by the WPCA, they would be using it on a regular basis. They would be responsible for the maintenance, but during times of emergency, it would be available to the town.
Where do you have it in their budget?
It's a capital project.
No, but I mean, is 80 the total cost?
No.
No, it's
160, 80's our cost, where's the other 80?
Sewer.
Excuse me?
WPCA separate
Sewer.
capital project.
Down in the second line from the bottom in the budget.
No, but it's in the operating budget of the sewer?
Yes.
No, it's in there. It's on the capital schedule.
It's line 40 on your capital improvement page.
But they're not,
No.
they're not buying it, right? They're paying cash.
How many generators do we have townwide? I mean, I know we have the big one at the high school, and we've got one up at Terriffill, right?
Right now you have two at the high school. We just put another one in last week. There's one at Terriffill.
We have, currently have, there's actually two separate generators at the Public Works compound. When we get, or if we install the new one that we were donated, we'll take the existing one and give it to the Parks Department. And then we have a couple of very small homeowner-sized generators,
But I guess where I'm trying to get back to, Tom, is we're basically focusing on 2 emergency shelters in the town and not trying to make all the schools, into shelters per se.
That's right.
yeah. And what part of the need for this portable generator is during Tropical Storm Irene. Once the mainline power to this facility dropped out, the emergency generator functioned as it should have and turned on, but after running for a few hours, a non-wear item within the generator called a voltage regulator started to fail. And we had all of the emergency operations personnel in this facility, and now our emergency generator was failing. And we had to make plans to evacuate this facility and go to the fire station. So if you can imagine the thought process being that during a critical emergency, we really need to have a belt and suspenders approach to power to this facility. And then it becomes a great asset to have town-wide.
And just to point out that actually maintenance checks are done weekly on the generator here. So this is something that, I think to Tom's point, you were never going to catch this one. It was unanticipated, but every effort is made to make sure these things are kept up to par.
Okay.
Next project, project planning funds. What we found out during our planning process this year is that when projects are not funded, we don't have the funding in place to do the due diligence that we need to do to get to a point, either an evaluation, a preliminary engineering exercise, a survey, expenses that need to happen so you can refine your scope and your costs for projects. We don't have those funds available. So we're asking for $25,000 a year, which would be a kind of a rolling account, revolving account that we could use and tap for these services that we may need for
28
project
the
planning.
first year.
Year one's
28
28.
would be fine, that's correct.
Why wouldn't we just breathe these into?
Put them in the operating budget.
Yeah. This is-
Well, again, it goes to sort of the approach we're taking to planning. All capital projects do require a planning phase and an evaluation. This board has objected many years over the fact that we come in with sort of softer numbers. And this will enable us to come in with, I'm not going to say hard numbers, but better numbers. Because as you go, the out years, as you begin the planning, are a little bit less precise, and as you get closer, you are able to refine them. We are not able to do that with the amount of staff we had. At one point, the engineering department in the town of Simsbury had 8 employees. We have 1 and a half-time position. So this is a recognition of town needs and to enable us to plan better. And in truth, all these will be used towards capital projects.
But why would we want to borrow money? Capital, the concept of capital is you're borrowing money
Well,
to
we're
pay for
hoping
it
you'll
over a
take it
long
out of the
time.
general fund, yeah.
Well, so right, that my comment
There's a
is,
benefit to not having it in the general fund. A general fund is traditionally a use it or lose it type fund. So this is for a lot of unknowns, right? That will have a downstream capital impact. We're not asking you to bond for it. We're actually going to ask for you guys to essentially transfer money over into this. And what's nice about it being in the
but it's
capital.
carryover money?
In the capital fund, capital funds are multi-year funds, so once you put it in there, it stays there. Whereas in the general fund, if you fund it and you don't do the effort, it just goes back to the general fund and you lose that appropriation. Closes out.
You could budget it every year.
Correct, but I have seen instances in the past where you guys have had these studies that you've wanted to do. You guys have appropriated it through the general fund and not done the effort, and now you gotta come back and ask for it again. That's less than ideal.
I think we have to think about how we want to fund something like that, and, it makes sense to put something up front.
Right, to do it.
The question is, we can take it, there's lots of pots of money we could take it out of, maybe this is not the ideal spot, so I think we can talk about that. It's on my little extra list here, all right.
Jeff, the text is not clear to me how it relates to the building.
Well, I was just showing you the type of things that we might need to do,
So this is not any
Ignore the
particular
pictures,
building.
yeah.
Trying to make it more interesting, probably.
There's a map there too.
Random pictures, okay.
We're out in the woods somewhere.
And a bike path.
All right, these are the last pictures you're gonna see.
Last project, various drainage improvement projects. I think what Public Works has found through the beginning of the pavement management program is that there's additional costs associated with drainage improvements that they're encountering that need to be, kind of get fixed before the pavement's actually fixed. We don't want to put good money after bad.
I mean, long and short of it, with the number of miles we're paving, we've had an increase in the number of drainage projects that we need to do. We always want to repair the drainage before we invest the money in a new roadway. The drainage is going to benefit the overall roadway safety in terms of providing appropriate drainage, reduction of puddles. It also is going to ensure that we get the value that we should out of our paving.
Basically, good drainage means good roads.
So these are the potential, these are at least the 5 areas you're gonna do it?
Yeah,
And it could be more.
exactly. So this would be over, this is over 2 years?
It's a 2-year project, correct.
I can testify to the need for the East Weetop one, for sure.
Okay. The next project.
Senior Center.
Tom was going to give us an update of where we are.
Sure.
The Board of Selectmen has held, as I think you know, we did make a unanimous decision to explore the Performing Arts Center. Location is the primary site for a senior center, and the process has begun underway. We did take the consideration of this board in requesting that we conduct a town survey. So that process is underway as well, and I'll let Tom update on the specifics.
Thank you. Yep, at the direction of the First Selectman, we put together a work group and town staff, which is being led by Jeff and Tom Roy, with Sean Kimball in particular, but virtually every staff member in this room has something to do with it. The goal is to get as much information about the viability of the site as we can, and as quickly as we can, so that we can make a determination about whether or not the Performing Arts Center site is going to work. That's one. Another goal is to make sure that a very wide range of interests are involved in all of this. We have certainly environmental concerns down there. We certainly, the Performing Arts Center obviously has an vested interest in how things go.
And our seniors.
And our seniors, of course. And thanks to this board, we're also in a position to do a survey, which will be, first step in that process will be to solicit input from all interested parties to make sure that we get the right buckets and that we're asking the right questions, certainly that we're asking the questions that will help this board to assess the whole project. This is on a very aggressive timeline. We're trying to get this information as quickly as possible. We're very close to going out with an RFQ for architects. The current architect and others will be invited. But the idea is to get as much of the concept put together as we can, as quickly as we can, so that there's something to talk about. It's almost like restarting the process. A lot of very good work has been done. But this is a new site, and this work group is making sure that all of the various permitting challenges are addressed, making sure that we have the right timeline for getting issues to the appropriate boards and commissions. I think that pretty well covers it.
But you're not going to ask us, it's going to take you a while to do that.
There is no intent right now to ask for a vote on this in the upcoming referendum. That's right. This is going to take some time to look at. We talked with both Town Council and Bond Council about keeping the senior center on the capital plan, as there is still a goal of trying to complete a senior center project. But to be clear, it would not be a referendum question for this coming May.
Right. So, to avoid confusion, we're not going to bring this forward to a public hearing.
That's right.
That's fine.
This is just for our information, the status report.
Well, the capital improvement plan is actually just a planning document, and it gives notice to the public, and so we do want to keep the public on notice that we are intending to build a senior center, and that's how we do it with the capital plan. We did talk with Bond Council, and she made clear to us that you can go to referendum at any time. You don't have to go to referendum just in May to bond, so we could go in November or the following May, or if there was another reason to go earlier, we could do that too.
But if we were gonna do this, we'd have to go through the public hearing, just like we're doing now,
Precisely.
and do it, but we could do it at a later date. We're not gonna do this
Oh,
on the
no.
April 8th. We're not
That's
gonna bring
correct.
this forward to the public hearing.
It's a very strict process with notice, hearings, and a vote, yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
That's it. We have projects in here under the sewer use fund. I don't know if you want to go through those or
No.
you're good.
Bless you. I assume
Not really.
our intent,
That's unhappy.
as far as intent to pay, are they going through, they're gonna come out of their reserves, is that?
Sewer use fund.
Sewer use fund, gotcha.
One final comment I just want to make about the capital projects. You'll see, they're not very exciting. These are really about preserving our assets, public safety, being good stewards of the land we have. These are just, let's take care of business and get it done projects this year. I mean, they're exciting to us, but, and we are going to work on pictures for next year. They will be better. Or gone.
We have Board of Ed projects.
Black and white everything.
Bert, are you gonna do those?
Do you have good pictures, Bert?
Nope.
Black and white,
Smart comments to go along with.
Today's date? Okay. So just highlighting the year one projects for you. Sure. For the Board of Education, that was part of the overall town capital 6-year improvement plan. The first project is the district network infrastructure project. And you see it's a $200,000 allotment for 15-16. And just to summarize the three, there's the central school roof project and a climate control improvements phase one for all 7 schools. So starting with the district network infrastructure project, the bulk of the dollars are for the upgrading to start the process of our switches, to upgrade the backbone of our network to 10 gigabyte, so a 10-fold increase in speed capability. We also would be able to achieve some server replacements for servers and do some wireless enhancements, 14 additional access points in several buildings. And then lastly, the web filter replacement. Our CEN is our state connection that now the town will have its own state sponsored internet, and this has a specific web filter that is required to be replaced. So that is the focus this year. Just to give you the context, we've used this term district network infrastructure. You see in multiple years, multiple projects. That's a generic term, so this is not to be confused with the multi-year virtualization district network infrastructure project, which is still in its last phase. So each year there's a different scope. Last year it was to do backup storage, and that was the focus for this current year project.
Berg,
Questions on that?
Berg,
Yes.
have other school districts started moving, I'm going to use the phrase, into the cloud, to get away from having to be continually buying new controllers and servers and all of the hardware that drives a system like this?
Sure. I mean, that's kind of a generic
question in terms of, we have moved forward in terms of our client virtualization to not have as many devices with their own CPUs, to have that centralized process for our client side. For our server side, we actually plan to do more server virtualization also. I think what you may be referring to is more the overall tug and pull that's out there, which is how much do you say we don't need our own Microsoft Exchange email system, we can do it all through Google. And there's pros and cons to each. In fact, I just got an email yesterday that there's it's almost like a debate show that is touring throughout the state, because there's pros and cons to each. And I have a very lengthy list of those things that you have some benefits and some detriments to outsourcing it, because you don't have as much control over it. If your internet connection is lost, you really have no point of contact. We have some redundancy. Fortunately, with the CEN line, we have a fiber line that gives us something in the instance that the CEN is down. So that's kind of a larger conversation, Nick, that I'd be happy to share that pro and con sheet that Jason Casey put together for us. But I think we're striking the balance between we certainly have the need to maintain an infrastructure. There are plenty of applications where we are outsourcing, and we're not always housing those on our own servers.
But part of my question was, are other school districts moving that direction?
I've seen that there are some that are using Google, not Exchange. I'm not aware of districts that have just kind of outsourced everything, but there could be some. I've not heard that as a real trend. I think we were towards the front of the cutting edge on the server virtualization, on the client virtualization piece, and that's becoming more common. I mean, the private sector did it first, and now they're following their lead.
Okay.
All right.
Go to the roof.
The roof. This one has been moved along and moved out, and now it really is time we have an annual inspection done and a report for all of our roofs on all of our schools. This is the oldest of this EPDM type roof, and so Dave was looking for a 20-year life expectancy. We've been able to exceed that. But it's time, given the amount of design work and the state grant process. Even if funded this year, we would not be able to bid it this summer. It would be the following summer. It would be about 24 years old at that point. And this is just a portion. It's the flat sort of so-called rubber roof portion. So these estimates, we reviewed the dollars, and we were told that they were still good budget numbers. So we'd like to forward with that in this funding cycle with work to be done in the following 2016.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So Central School had that slate, and a few years back we replaced that portion.
Part
of
of the
roof?
renovation, right? That was the new portion.
Okay, so this is where is this on the?
This is essentially the picture that's shown there. It's kind of that flat portion in the middle. So the new portion out to the front has the steep, and then the old portion in the back has some of that, but this is sort of that middle.
And will this match what we just put on the rest of the roof? Because I know we took the slate and put a different product on.
This is a totally different type of roof. This is currently a rubber type roof, and it will be replaced in the same kind.
It's flat.
It's just flat. You wouldn't see it from.
You don't have the same kind of roof, elevated roof.
And again, this is eligible for reimbursement.
What's the reimbursement rate?
We're still about 33%, right about. All right, so the last project has changed the most from prior plans. We had previously had a budget of, I believe, around $900,000 for some cooling projects, and it was really primarily some fans some ceiling fans in some schools, and it was, believe it or not, costed out to be mainly the auditorium at the high school, which is an extremely high-ticket item. We have an updated number for that, and it's still very expensive. So what's been apparent over the last number of years is, you know, we have these shoulder seasons, spring and fall, where it's just really getting uncomfortable in our classrooms primarily. And there are portions of each school that can be warmer, and we've you know, noted and tracked those areas, and we wanted to say, you know, what could we really do to not put central air into buildings, but to improve the situation in all of our schools, not just in one large gathering space. So we started out with Fire Associates, and we had them come in, and they produced for us, this is the end of it, there's one of these reports for each school, and it started with a basic premise to them. We had them walk with each principal or senior custodian in each of the buildings and just see the current status of some of those areas where we have some portions of the building that had AC, and where were those portions where we had the highest temperature readings in those shoulder seasons. And we said, realistically, we know that we're not going to be able to cool the whole building like some of our neighbors with newer schools, where you have a total school that doesn't have you know, piecemeal. But for us, we knew it wasn't going to be realistic given the state of the capital plan for the long term to do something like that. But what could we do to make a difference? You know, we even had PTOs offering to you know, to buy portable units, but we said let's look at it in a little more systematic way, and we said from a cost-efficient point of view, it's not something that the engineers usually like to do, but we said let's look at everything from commercial-grade window units to portable units to the third option that we looked at is the so-called ductless splits. And I need to so we said let's cost all of these out, just trying to do some localized areas in each school, not to do every space by any stretch, and looked at the basic pros and cons of those. So for the life expectancy and the noise involved, as well as issues around placement if you have window units on a first floor, you can see that there's pros and cons to those. We got pricing for that. The next option is was to do these portables, again, commercial grades. And I should stress that there's electrical upgrade work needed to even do this, even if you wanted to do it in this so-called piecemeal fashion. So those prices are in here, and the engineers worked on the load calculations and said if you really wanted to do it to the optimal temperature, this is what the size would need to be. Now the ductless split option is our recommended option, but we have the pricing and looked at the cost benefit of it. This has the benefit of longer life expectancy. It's definitely more quiet, so when you're trying to have instruction taking place, not having that background noise is an important consideration. It's not something we'd be running year-round, but when you need it, you really need it. And we've had experience on a limited basis with these systems. We've had ones installed at Henry James and at the D172 conference room at Simsbury High School that some of you may have been to gatherings or meetings in, and these work very, very well. So this is a process where we first asked the principals to look at these priority spaces, which were in turn costed out in great detail that I can share with anybody who's interested. But now I have to go back to each principal, and assuming we get the funding for this first phase, we'd be able to address significant priority areas in all schools with this first phase, which is $2,150,000, and we would also be able to do some of the larger spaces, at least one between Simsbury High School and Henry James. So for example, the updated cost of doing the auditorium is over $1 million. So that's not on the list. It's going to break this whole budget of $3 million for a two-phase project at totaling $3 million, and trying to get the best benefit to all of our students. The third floor, for example, at Simsbury High School alone, $2.3 million. So we would never be able to do every classroom, even on a single floor like that. It's just too expensive to do it on a sort of retrofit basis. We lost the opportunity to do it as a part of the initial project. So what we're looking at is the ductless split option for classrooms and areas in each of our schools. In some cases, we're still recommending ceiling fans for some cafeteria areas, because those have shown to be effective at Henry James, for example, in our cafeteria there. And the next step would be, now that prices have been attached to the areas and the approach has been recommended, we'd have to go back, and if we're able to get this funding, and I know it has to go to referendum due to its cost overall, each school would be able to prioritize that portion of funding and say what would get done first.
Your request here is 2.1 million in this, 2,150,000 in this year. Now,
Yes.
The other 950 is in a year out, or
We're
how
showing
far?
it 1 year out, right.
Okay, is there any other additional amounts asked for?
No, this is what we've identified as what we see. This, like I said, this would not include the auditorium, which would be over $1 million.
Is that in your capital plan, the auditorium?
It's not on our plan right now. Like I said, it previously was. What can be done, for example, is the cafeteria area could be done for there's a significant sum of money. The so-called gold gym, the new gym, which would be our backup location for graduation, can be done for a very cost-effective sum. So that's where we'd be looking on a building-by-building basis to make sure that we had the clear priority. I would also point out that if this funding is granted, that we would also, from a timing point of view, we'd start doing the work in the fall to get the electrical work done first, put it out to bid, and we'd be looking at, at the first season would be that following summer, spring-summer season, just from a timing point of view.
How about the operational cost of this? Have you included that in the budget?
We have, from a timing point of view, we have not formally said, we would be just hitting probably the last month or two of 2016, so the 15-16 budget does not have a significant impact yet, but we know that there are going to be impacts.
Have you calculated the cost?
I have asked the engineer to assist us. We have not yet worked on the specifics of each location yet, but that's part of the scope that you're going to have to have as well.
And so would you be using this air conditioning on days other than those 2 or 3 days in June and September when it's hot?
I think it's more than 2 or 3 days, but no, the intent would not to be using them other than those
And do you
shoulder
have
seasons.
I don't know what the metric would be for when you would turn it on. I mean, I finally did put air conditioning in part of my house because I was consulting during that time, and it did get hot. But I have to tell you, I can't ever remember having the air conditioning on, even though I was working all day, except in July and August. So I'm not real favorably disposed to putting air conditioning in. And last summer, I don't think I turned my air conditioning on for more than 48 hours. So I just kind of wonder, I need to be convinced that the need is really there.
I think that's something we could get a lot of voters to help express their feeling. Like I said, there were a lot of parents that were willing to put some money out there to try to get a window unit for their particular classroom.
So what's the sense of what's the temperature?
We're talking about temperatures well into the 80s in those classrooms. So depending upon locations, and again, it's not each and every classroom, but if you think of, Terriffill School, the second floor on the east side where that sun is coming in, that gets
so
work.
that's
And there's plenty of, I mean, each school has some places, so we're not talking about putting them in every room.
Right.
We're not even close, and I have a detailed list by priority of specific classroom numbers and areas in each school. So
Perhaps you
And so
can get
that's
to
a-
us some information as far as, like, what you expected number of days,
Right.
you know, so we get
And
some more
when they are.
information.
sure.
And
I mean, we-
perhaps operating costs, get a handle on costs so we can understand a little better.
Hey, just two other questions. Do the windows generally open? Or are they like the kinds of windows that don't open?
There is a variety of those. I mean, for example, the large windows at Terriffill open right up, and we have fans, but you're just moving around air that is just far warmer and more moisture. So some of it is about removing moisture. The irony is that the modulars we took down.
Mr. Chairman, can you ask the audience to please not interrupt?
Yeah, when we're having conversations, we have to try to keep it down so we can hear the speaker we ask questions of. I appreciate it very much.
The irony is, for example, we took out modulars at Latimer and Tooten, which had AC. Some of the spaces, you know, where we were able to, I mean, literally at Latimer in peak times, kids would go into the hallway for a cooling off period, and we use that in each building. Principals use that to try to just take that edge off during those really difficult times.
And one last question, or maybe suggestion. It made a huge difference in my house, because I also have like solid windows on 3 walls that are all south-facing. Putting in shades was a very cheap option. And if you draw the shades, I mean, the night times, particularly in the spring and fall, are cool. So the windows opening at night cools it off. You draw the shades during the day, and it doesn't get hot. So I would ask that you explore if you can put shades in. That'll really reduce the need for air conditioning.
We actually added shades, most recently some new shades to Henry James, and we do utilize that. We're just dealing with the size and scope of buildings where that just doesn't work quite as well as in smaller. But
I guess
we
I'm
have
just old-fashioned on this point.
Berg, is that the last of your capital?
That's the last of the
Good. All right. Now, you have an updated operating budget to submit?
I do. You have ones electronically, and I have updated.
Now, you sent around the version to us on the...
No, I have no presentation. I was just looking to get my. Go ahead, pull it back.
And then unplug that. Take it. I'm gonna change all of a sudden.
So Bert, as far as after the change in the budget, I mean, original budget given to us was,
2.47%.
right, and it went down to 1.3, it's down to
It's a
66,452,662?
Sounds accurate.
Thanks.
They were at, initially they were 67,221. Then when they dropped and they dropped to 1.7%. They went down to 66, I'm just rounding, 66,503. And now the new budget's at 66,453.
Burke, on the new budget, what's the final number?
66,453,005, and that's 850,188 is the proposed increase, or 1.3%.
So you reduced it from the last time we saw you by $50,000?
There was there was an additional delta from what we had looked at.
Right, we had all the changes on the board, plus you did an additional 50.
Right.
It's a little less than 50, yes.
The number we're going to be asked to move on, if we move on to public hearing, is 66,453,005.
Correct. And we updated the transmittal letters also with your,
So that's a 1.30% increase?
yes.
And just, can you tell us what that 50 was that you found on top of everything we'd already?
Yeah, it was part of our major driver slide, and we highlighted the fact that we were estimating, sorry, Jerry, we were estimating possible increase of 50,000 for a combination of liability auto property, workers' comp, and our OPEB. And I think those were the three items.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that.
And then, fortunately, you know, we went the opposite direction, obviously, on OPEB, with the help of your last meeting, and we also had favorable news. We were expecting an increase in we had put in for a larger increase in the workers' comp and the liability auto property than ultimately came in. So that was the new information for us since the last time that the Board of Ed voted.
So the good news is we have a lower budget than we had before, and it's down to 1.3%. I think that's what we were, when we did our last mill rate projection, Joe, he stuck out of the room, I think we had a slightly higher number in there, and then we...
He's changing the motions as we speak.
Okay, so I think it was 1.37% we were talking about, and then I think it went down to, after that, changed down to about a 1.3% increase.
Well, that should be that 50.
Yeah, the extra 50, yeah, the 50 went down. All right, what we have to do tonight now is we have a public hearing on April 8th, of which we're going to bring up the operating budgets of Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, Simsbury Farms, Sewer Authority. We have debt service on there, non-public schools, and we have the capital non-recurring and the capital. So we have to bring that forward to a public hearing to get the public's input, and then our board decides what budgets we want to move on to referendum. If we feel comfortable with those budgets, moving them on. So tonight, our charge is we have to move something on to the public hearing so we can discuss it with the public. And, we've heard from both boards, their budgets, presentations. We've heard the capital. And our ultimate decision will be after that public hearing. We have to decide what we want to move on to the referendum for the voters to ultimately vote on. And there'll be 3 questions in the referendum. 3 budget questions, and then 3 capital. If we, based on it's over 1%, so anything over 1% or $950,000 has to go as a particular question itself for the capital. So the operating budget would be Board of Selectmen, would be one question, the Board of Ed budget, and then traditionally we lump all the others into the 3rd category, which is Simsbury Farms, the operating, the Sewer Authority, and I believe debt service is all in that one. And then we'll have an individual question on any project over $950,000. They would get the vote on if we move those forward.
And those go individually.
Yes. Also, we have to approve bond language if we want to bond the project in the capital. If we don't want to bond it, like we did last year, we didn't put bond language, we paid for it out of reserves. For some of these smaller projects. I think one of the things we can probably take advantage of is in our
Thank you.
debt service number. We are in the process of going to do bond issue and refinancing. So hopefully we'll have some more accurate numbers, but our debt service might come in actually lower than last year, but we don't know what it is yet. So I think we have an opportunity to make that category debt retirement / capital, so we can pay cash for capital directly through that service budgeted number without causing a tax increase by that number if we keep it the same as last year. So I think we have some flexibility there to work with. You know, last year we paid for it out of surplus. We paid $900 and some odd thousand out of that current year's budget, but we don't have that same situation this year. We can probably pay a little bit out, but not to the extent of 900. So our mission tonight is to move things along if we feel comfortable in it, unless we feel there's a drastic change to a budget. I had Joe make up a motion that we have to make to move the budgets onto the public hearing. Doesn't mean we approve the budgets, it just means we're moving them on to the public hearing, so we can have this public hearing and then decide what we want to do with them after. As you recall, last year we had a meeting after the public hearing that night, and then we had an additional meeting another time, because we heard some comments at the public hearing that gave us pause for some of the projects, and believe it or not, we held one up. And then later on, it worked itself out, but there was some concern, and somebody had to rework a project. So the process now is for us to move it on public hearing, hear what the public has to say, and unless we have any real objections to any of the budgets, I recommend we move them on so the public can speak, and then we can hear what they are. Then we have to ultimately decide if we approve the budgets or not.
So Peter, if we want to talk about maybe combining some of the capital projects, or there's some other way to look at some of this, we can do that after the public hearing.
Yes.
So we really, right now, we're really just trying to give the public a chance to give us their opinion on what we've been listening to tonight and previously about what's in all the detail of all the budgets.
Right.
So would you like a motion?
Sure.
Okay, I don't know that we need to put the exact numbers in there, but I move that we bring to public hearing the Board of Selectmen budget as presented to us tonight, the Board of Education budget as modified and presented us tonight, and the special revenue fund and capital and non-recurring fund budgets.
I think you have to say water pollution control.
Yeah, and water pollution control. sorry.
Residential rental properties.
Yep.
You got Simsbury Farms. We also have to talk about the capital non-reoccurring, and we talk about LoSiP, because that's in technically capital non-reoccurring, and the capital improvement plan for 15-16.
Okay, that basically, we're moving that to public hearing so
Right.
that we can get input on what the public thinks about these proposals.
Do we need to read this?
Do you think we should read it in, this motion, or we can just attach it? Probably should read it.
You guys can just send this out to, all you're doing is inviting public input.
Right. We've never done this
It
before,
is,
that's
it is a
why.
hearing that I will notice, but I'm gonna notice the budgets that have been approved, because you guys haven't made any changes to it, so.
Correct.
Right. I mean, our intent is just to move it forward, so I mean, if everyone's has any questions, we can just move them forward to the public. We're not getting in the way of the budgets, we're just letting them go forward. If we want to get in the way, or I think we have to formally vote on them after, or we can just step back and let them move forward to referendum. So our board, I don't hear we're trying to get in the way of any of the budgets, we're just moving them forward.
At this point, no.
Right. So Barb, make a motion.
Yeah, I make a
move the
motion
pub-
that we move the budgets as presented to us and all of the budgets that Peter listed out to the public hearing so that we can hear what our residents think about these proposals.
Is there a second?
Second,
Right.
but I would like to make some
Discussion.
comments.
Sure.
And this is sort of an awkward set of comments, because I'm partially cogent to this, moving it forward, and partially about other stuff. But let me preface it by saying, I had this very funny little horoscope. Not that I believe it, but hey, President Reagan had an astrologer, so why not me? My horoscope 2 days ago was, haste makes waste, take time to reassess the budget, and rein in excessive expenditures so there's something left in the pot when you really need it. I thought that was kind of shocking. I'm actually going to read you a statement, and I ask your forbearance in me reading, but I wanted to choose my words carefully and make sure that I said what I meant to say. So let me start by saying that I'm really, really pleased that we've apparently been able to achieve our goal of no tax increase, thanks both to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education working closely with us. And I do want to make note that Matt and Burke, because my comments are largely about the Board of Ed, have made themselves readily available to me when I've had my usual zillion questions, and so have Lisa and Joe, by the way. And so they've helped me avoid sucking up lots of your time with my questions on things that were completely well answered by staff. So thank you for that. That allowed me to move more quickly in these meetings. I do want to address some concerns, particularly about the Board of Education, and I'm sorry that some of their members aren't here, but I feel the relationship between the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance really needs some serious improvement. And I hope that we can become more collegial and mutually constructive before we go through this budget process again next year. In order to achieve a better relationship, I really think we need to work on defining our processes, our roles, and our expectations. I'm still kind of new on this board, and I suspect we're doing some things differently now than perhaps were done in the past. And maybe that's made things uncomfortable, but we need to figure out how to make everybody comfortable. In the public Board of Ed meetings, which I do watch on television, as I'm sure most of my colleagues do, the Board of Ed members have said some things that kind of shocked me and confused me and even offended me. One member said that the Board of Ed's role is to, quote, protect the school budget. Another said, and I am admittedly grossly paraphrasing, that it was our job to make cuts and not the Board of Ed's job. On the other hand, another member said that what is in the line items of the budget of Board of Ed was none of our business. And that is a quote. I was particularly upset by that, as he's someone that I hold in very high esteem, and I didn't feel that that kind of statement was reciprocating the level of respect that we have for him. More importantly, these are two very opposing points of view. One saying that it's not the Board of Ed's job to cut the budget, and the other one saying that it's none of our business. So that led me to kind of wonder, well, whose job is it to scrutinize the budget? And so I looked up the Connecticut statutes, and I believe that maybe there's some confusion in how they're interpreted. Indeed, the statute does indicate that once the budget is settled, the Board of Ed can move funds between line items without returning to the Board of Finance for permission. But this doesn't mean that the Board of Finance doesn't have the right to understand what's in each line item when we're reviewing the budget proposal. How could we possibly settle on an aggregate number for the budget without understanding each component part? The law doesn't address whether the Board of Ed should make its own efforts to economize in its budget, although I'm sure that all taxpayers expect, as some Board of Ed members have appropriately noted, that the Board of Ed does have a role in protecting the taxpayers and representing the taxpayers and making sure that they're spending their money wisely and getting the biggest bang for the buck. I also don't think the taxpayers expect the Board of Finance to be only focused on cutting the budget. None of us here feel that we're only trying to cut taxes. I think I speak for all of us in saying that we fervently support the quality of education and want to promote good quality education and recognize the importance to the town of that. And I think sometimes that gets lost in our discussions. And none of us would be happy to see cuts in the programmatic side of the Board of Ed budget if it meant risking the quality of education. What we want is the biggest bang for the buck. We didn't make any recommendations or even recommend consideration of any cuts to the programmatic aspects of the Board of Ed budget. All of the cuts made were things like increasing pension contributions from non-Board of Ed money so that your annual required contribution would be reduced. And things like investing in the energy savings programs, which you recommended and which we wholeheartedly supported. These are not things that reduce the quality of education in Simsbury. And even the questions that Jeff raised and others raised about fuel costs and energy line items are not things that in any way reduce the quality of education. One thing that the statute does in fact say is that the Board of Finance should make spending recommendations and suggestions to the Board of Ed as to, quote, how they may consolidate non-educational services and realize financial efficiencies. The Board of Ed must then respond in writing to such recommendations. I mean, I think we all know that we're living in an era of doing more with less. All of us in all of our outside jobs hear that mantra constantly. And we also know that spending more money does not necessarily mean improving quality, unless it's spent really carefully. And so that demands that we all work together to get the best value for every dollar that's spent. I think both boards have work to do in mending our relationship. I, for one, am kind of new to this process, and I want to learn more about the Board of Ed's process. I'm sure that what I see on television in the Board of Ed meetings is really not the full story. I know that you guys work hard in lots of prior subcommittee meetings, but I have no idea what goes on in those meetings. So I'm open to learning more so that I'm more attuned to what you're doing. I know that others on the board, Nick included, have done some analytical work on the latest proposal, and that some of us still feel that there are some potential savings to be gleaned or that could be discussed, or at least we have continued questions. But I also know that we all feel that given that we have achieved our stated goal of no tax increase, and in the interest of seeking a better relationship between the boards, at this point it makes sense to let these items go. Unlike the folks in Washington, we do recognize the importance of compromise. I do think, though, that for the coming year, we've got some serious groundwork to do. I think we on the Board of Finance may need to give you better guidelines early on. That's a difficult thing to do because we don't know what the grand list growth will be, what the required pension arc is going to be, what the health insurance, so it's hard to give you an exact guideline, but I've heard that that's something that you'd like, and so that's something we need to explore how we can do better. I think we might need, some sort of professional facilitator or counselor to help bring us together in a mutually respectful understanding of our distinct but complementary roles. We really need to get our long-range planning off the ground, Joe. I'm just saying this all in a plea that I don't want to see the kind of discord that I saw this year. It was uncomfortable for me personally and upsetting, and I'm sure it was for everybody. And I think we can work better together and get good results. I know I have a tendency to be kind of blunt sometimes, so I hope that my comments here are taken in the spirit in which they're delivered, which is that I'm seeking conciliation and not conflict, and I look forward to a continuing and improved relationship, and I do support the budget going forward. So thank you for
your comments.
Forbearance.
One other thing, going back, something that we might have forgotten about, revenue, the other revenue items. Right. From what was originally presented, there's some changes, increases that we had discussed.
Right.
Will those be in what's going before the public?
This was definitely a disjointed process a little bit. That the Board of Finance actually started talking about revenue before the Board of Selectmen gave you the budget. So at their last meeting, or at our last meeting, I did document all of the revenue assumptions that you guys have given me. These are specific to the non-mill rate related. So these are non-tax type items. So these were the numbers that we discussed at the last meeting. This is what I'd recommend you put on the notice for the town meeting.
So this is what's going to go forward for the public hearing.
Correct.
And we discussed the increases at our meeting the last time that we had discussed, and you put it up. Unfortunately, you couldn't get on SCTV, but, like we increased the interest income and various other fees.
Yep, correct. So interest income, we went up 125. Originally, we had talked about putting that up 175, but with the movement of $3 million over to the OPEB trust, I just felt it was best not to overly challenge that number. Plussed up the Westminster School pilot payment. You guys are receiving north of $120,000 a year. It's been planned for $99,000 a year, so trued it up to actuals. Building department fees, we did plus up to $600,000 from $500,000. You guys are demonstrating $600,000 a year right now. I see that continuing for at least the next 12 to 18 months, if not longer. And I think that was the only sizable changes.
But the bottom line was 8,211,700,000,
Correct.
703, I'm sorry.
And that's the number that's on the indirect revenues line
Yes.
of your spreadsheet, right?
Correct.
So that's an increase of around 200.
247.
But that's what we're gonna be discussing at the public hearing, that,
And just to be clear, you guys are demonstrating this kind of favorability this fiscal year as well.
I'm sorry?
You are demonstrating this kind of favorability in fiscal 15 as well. I mean, not totally on the investment income, but building department fees and other.
I don't really want to get into the spreadsheet, but have you run it with all these numbers at this point?
This is the exact numbers that we went over at the last meeting.
But we're right at zero?
You are negative right
A
now.
little negative, good.
right, so
Very little.
my intention is when we get up in front of the voters to do the presentation, we'll show the expenditure side, and then we show where the revenues come from. Indirect revenues are up. We're gonna have the grand list growth, and then we're gonna have the increase in the supplemental auto list. We'll show an increase. That is something new this year. And then the net result of that is we can decrease taxes, because we don't need to raise as much as, with the same mill rate, so we can decrease the mill rate a small percent.
Right, it's pretty close to flat.
Pretty close to flat.
Right.
But that's what we did last year, and so,
Right.
I mean, we got a two-year trend here that we're going in the right direction.
And basically, my intention is to explain to the voters that we've done a lot of hard work in using our reserves wisely and where we put them, categorize them, so we can get some savings in the budget. We're using them to get investment return up, because we have a financial officer willing to do that, director, so now we can get savings there, tax savings there. So I think we've used reserves wisely to give some tax relief to the voters. And I think we'll be able to articulate that when we get up on the 8th and talk about it. So, just want to make sure everyone's attuned to that, because technically in the book we had different numbers, but these are the numbers we're going to go forward with that we had discussed. So, all right. Second, we've been working on,
Did we vote on the
Yeah,
motion?
Peter,
We need to vote on that motion.
should we vote on the motion to move the budgets?
Yeah.
I would.
okay, yes. Why don't we vote on to move the change in the revenue?
No, the
no,
budgets, we
budgets.
had a motion and a
Move on
second.
to,
And we
Oh, I'm
never
sorry.
voted on the-
All right, can you amend that, though, to say to change the revenue?
So in past public hearings, we don't know the revenue at that point in time, and we give them, here's where we are now, but again, there's a lot of moving pieces.
So, and that's relatively ironic, because in the past, you guys have, in the public notice, had revenues in it.
Right.
I don't know where that came from.
We put this in the public notice, we don't put the grand list growth in the public notice.
Right.
We do put these in there.
Okay, so I'll amend my motion to include the revenue projections.
And
Ex
Who's
grand
who's
list.
amending their second? Linda? Second, all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Final item, we've been working on the annual report. You can take a look, I got a couple, this is not final yet, it's still preliminary, but I'll hand out a couple copies if people want to look through it. I think they've done a wonderful job. I told them a little more pictures colorful of the town. They've done an excellent job. I think it's a little easier reading. It's not as much small print, so it's a little easier. Things, key schedules pop out at you a little bit more. So I think they've done an excellent job, but if you want to take a look at it, then,
Do you have copies for everyone? or-
I made 2 up. I had our office quickly, I got my hands on it, and I quickly made 2 up. If you want, I'll
You want- do you want-
I can't wait.
Well, we're supposed to read them right now?
No, just for your, we're gonna try to finalize in the next week or so, but, so just for your information. Any other business? If there is none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Any second? All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.